Welcome back to the Beer Ladies podcast. I am your host today, Christina, and I am here with Joanne and Lisa, and we are interviewing Claire Dalton from Dungarvan Brewing Company, which we are really excited about. Yay. Before I get into it, just to remind you to check us out on YouTube, like and subscribe, and you can get us wherever you can download your podcasts. So before we get into the interview, we have to start with the all-important question, what are you drinking? So Joanne, do you want to kick us off? What are you drinking?
So I have Dungarvan, the Saison. Now, I've had this a few times. I decided to get it again. I really, really enjoyed it. And I don't typically like Saison, but I really enjoy it. It's very kind of summery and better, nice for this weather, I think. And it's starting to brighten up a bit. Definitely one I enjoyed. They had a couple left in my local, so.
Oh, lovely for a day like today when the sun was out. That'll probably, we can put a pin in when we recorded this because everyone will be like, it was that one day.
Yeah.
So.
Nice weather, one day at the end of February with the beautiful weather. So what is it? What are the notes in it, Joanne? Is there, did I say?
Oh, are you testing me?
No!
No, sorry. It's called Curious Orange. Saison style beer with orange peel and thyme. Now, I won't say I don't think I can really get the thyme off that, but that's maybe just my palate. But definitely get the orange, and it's nice and light. And
that sounds really nice for a Saison. I bet that's beautiful.
Yeah, and as I said, I don't usually like Saisons, but it's just really lovely. It's a really good balance of everything, I think.
Awesome.
Really yeah.
What are you drinking, Lisa?
Well, unfortunately, I could not find any Dungarvan in my 5-kilometer radius at the moment. So a little knock on our local distributors. But I do have my standard school night beer, my 4 Provinces mild, which is just always delicious and just great to have something that's, not going to, knock your brain out after 1 or 2. So always a delight. But looking forward to hearing more about Dungarvan because I keep hearing wonderful things. And the ones I have had, I've absolutely loved. So keen to learn more.
Great.
And I'm also drinking a Dungarvan. I'm drinking the Camara. I am pronouncing this wrong. Camara. Oh my gosh.
Camara. There you go.
Camara. Challenger Session Pale Ale because it's 3.8%, which is an excellent school night beer.
Absolutely.
An excellent school night beer. And I love this beer. But this reminds me of summer when I went to see Claire.
Hey.
Speaking of lovely sunny weather, I was really happy to open this day because it was a nice day out and it reminded me when we were down in Dungarvan and the weather was absolutely stunning. We were eating outside and drinking lots of lovely Dungarvan beer, lots of Helvet Gold, actually lots of Helvet Gold, which is one of my favorites. But yeah, so just reminiscing about that and enjoying this beer and wishing I was there so long ago.
Particular beer started life as a summer seasonal before we added it to the full time range. So it was initially our summer beer.
Looks beautiful.
It's really nice. I mean, it's really, really nice. And I'm just so ready for summer. So I am here pretending that it is summer.
I haven't done the best job of pouring this. It's not all in there yet.
That's lovely and fluffy, though.
Yeah, nice fluffy.
Mine is. Don't look at my glass, lads. It was my water glass today, so it's very clean. I don't know what you're talking about, but
it looks clean.
Yes. Don't look too closely, but yeah, it's very pretty, nice head, very nice beer. Excellent. So, Claire, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of talk about a little bit of just a quick introduction, background into who you are and what you do?
Okay, the short version. So I'm Claire Dalton. I was one of the 4 people, I suppose, who started Dungarvan Brewing Company. The other 3 being my husband Tom, my brother Cormac, who's our head brewer, and Cormac's wife Jen. So it's between the 4 of us we started back in. Launched our beers in 2010, so our 10th birthday was in lockdown. I was like, we'll do the 11th, but maybe the 18th now or something, I'm not sure. So I what do I do at the brewery? I mean, I don't, as I say, I don't even pretend to brew, but probably have a finger in every other element of what goes on there. So, you know, mostly kind of running the business side, and I, in ordinary times, would do most of our tastings, and I do our tours and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, sort of all elements. I mean, I would be thrown on the bottling line or things like that. But yeah, or, you know, be told to flick off that switch in half an hour, I have to go pop out or something, but that's about the extent of the brewing that I do. So I don't, as I say, I don't even claim to pretend to brew. But everything else probably in the brewery I would do a bit of.
And I think we want to just start kind of what even drew you to craft beer. How did you guys decide to start a brewery? What was the impetus behind that?
The old chestnut. I suppose. I mean, like everybody says, oh, we were sitting in the pub going, it would be a wonderful kind of thing. And what there was genuinely a bit of that about it. So as I said, Cormac is the head brewer, has always been. So he was the one who was the home brewer and coming from that background, and kind of getting Tom as my husband, himself and Tom, we had been living away and moved back to Dungarvan. We're all from here originally. And getting Tom into, first of all, trying out these beers he was brewing, and then he was doing brewing with them. And it was a thing of we were socializing and going out together. We were young, freer and child freer, etc. at that time. And you know, it was the thing of there was the same 4 taps in every pub. I'm going back to 2007, 2008 kind of time here. So, and it was always the thing of, wouldn't it be great if there was more range, and that the choice was starting to come through. You know, the international beers were coming in and that sort of thing, but it was more the off-license side. And then I suppose the separate thing then is that there was always a brewery in Dungarvan, as most towns of this size and up probably would have had. So there was that history of there being the brewery in town and all that kind of thing. And I know Tom and Jen's grandfathers would have worked in the brewery and that kind of thing. So it was sort of from the two sides, I suppose, the historic and also seeing what was happening elsewhere and what was coming, and, you know, the way that it had gone, craft beer in the States, in European countries, places like that. So seeing that, look, it's going to come here. And it reached a point where we were talking about it for so long, we said, somebody else is going to do this in Dungarvan and we're going to get so annoyed. So we started looking at it properly then and researching it, and genuinely, it was like the end of 2008 when the recession hit. I mean, we tick a lot of the cliche boxes, I know, and that kind of thing. My husband Tom would have worked in the construction industry, so, you know, which obviously the bottom fell out of, and that, so that was really final push of what are we doing? Are we talking about this or doing it because we probably need to look at our, I was also pregnant at that time and everything. So, you know, we would have had to look at our options. Do we move abroad or do we go elsewhere looking for work or something? So that was our sort of, you know, real last push to get us going. We hoped to launch in 2009. And actually we, you know, incorporated the business in 2009. But it was April 2010 before we actually launched the beers.
Oh, so you actually also launched the beers with the new, like a new small person as well at the same time. Because I have 2 kids, so I'm just like,
yeah, and another one the year after. My 2 boys are, as I said, the brewery will be 11 in April. They will be 10 and 12 in June. So
they bookend. Wow.
Yeah. So there was,
busy.
the early years I was sort of fairly tucked away and kept myself in the background, because I mean, it isn't a good look to be out promoting beer when you're heavily pregnant, or, you know. And you know, I was doing a lot of bouncing babies on my knee while I was doing stuff, or on the phone, or I suppose what everybody's doing these days. But I mean, I was way before the trend.
Yes, pioneer.
So I mean, you know, they spent a bit of time in the office with me and stuff when they were very small. So yeah, that was sort of, I suppose, where I came from them. Like, I mean, I did keep myself in the background for those sort of reasons, and then a few years in, it was like, no, you know what, I'm sick of being stuck behind the office door or whatever. So that's how I kind of came to be the one doing the tasting, because I was mad to get on the road then and everything, you know, whereas Tom was out doing the selling at the time and was just sick of being on the road, so it suited that way. So
nice.
That's kind of how I sort of went that route, I suppose.
Amazing.
Oh, that's really, I mean, it's really interesting. How do you find, or how important do you think the role of community is in creating? I mean, you talked about, oh, someone else in Dungarvan is going to do this. And I noticed when I was in Dungarvan, just the availability of your beer. And we fell in love with the restaurant, The Moorings, of course, by the castle, and just, it was amazing, and had lots of your lovely beer. And it was something that we noticed, just the community sort of push to oh, have when we were there and we were like, ordering beer, oh, have you tried Dungarvan? Oh, yes, we have. But thank you for telling us, just that sort of like community mentality of, yeah, this is our local beer, and try it with our local food. And how important do you think that is to your brewery, or to craft beer in general?
Yeah, well, firstly, it's brilliant to hear that. that's what you experience down here. I will say that going back to day one, I remember our original business plan, and we'd hoped to sell X amount here and all that. And I mean, I think we had hoped to be stocked in one place in Dungarvan and selling like a half a case a week or so, so from the get-go, we Dungarvan just wanted it, and it was brilliant, it was always more than what we expected initially, because we thought, it's a small town, and if there's one place that's really into their beers, and if they took us, that'd be, so lots of the likes of, like you mentioned, the Moorings and a few other places like that are not, we're Dungarvan, we want Dungarvan beer. So that was brilliant. So we had that from day one, massive community support locally, which I think it's fair to say, I don't think I'm speaking out of hand, but a lot of other breweries did not get that in their local towns. It took a lot longer before they came around. So maybe we're just a more progressive type town, I'm not sure. But we were delighted with that first day. In terms of community, I suppose there's so many different communities then, like there is the local support community, the kind of craft beer community. We would also have been fairly aligned with the food community, and the food producers, and even the chefs, restaurants and stuff like that around us, and wider, I suppose. But there are quite a few around our locality in the whole of County Waterford, and then the kind of in the wider community. I think maybe as well, around the time we started, a lot of people were starting small food businesses, artisan producers and stuff like that. So, we kind of all linked in, and we were sort of doing lots of things together. So yeah, community has been really important to us, but there are lots of offshoots, I suppose, of community.
I think, well, Joe, you're kind of, well, you're down around there now.
Yeah. So I live just by the hospital, actually. So fairly local, and I'm trying to be a bit more local about what I'm drinking. It's not that easy here, because there's you guys and there's Metal Man, and there's actually a very good supply local to me of yours and Metal Man. So that's kind of handy. But it's lovely. Like, I love the whole copper coating as well. It's such a nice thing to draw on, because it's such a beautiful kind of part of the country, and which we've only recently discovered.
Yeah, I remember actually, Claire, when we were down and we met up with you, and we did the brewery tour, and we talked about it, and then soon after I met up with Joe, or it was before that I met up with Joe? I don't remember, Joanne.
I think it was after.
Was it after? I think it was after. And we were talking about how much we loved how everything sort of tied into the names of the beers sort of tie into the locality, and the stories behind them, and how important and this is for Claire and also for Joanne and Lisa, how important do you think sort of a story behind a beer is to purchasing a beer, or to going back to creating that sort of idea of community and locality? And
I personally, anytime I go anywhere, I always liked, and it's harder to do here. It's getting a bit easier in Ireland, but like when I was in the UK or the US or whatever, I always like to try find something local and find out about it. And so it definitely would draw me to something if there's like a bit of a history, a bit of story behind it. And just to get an idea of what's around it, where you are. It's nice.
Yeah, and I wonder too if there's been kind of almost like a sort of a curve, kind of a return to it, because I feel like, at least for some of the American ones, it was very big in kind of late 90s, early 2000s to really tie into that local, that's almost sort of hyper local kind of scene. I can think of like a lot of the Dogfish Head beers being named after very particular local things, or some of the other ones that were near to me. And then I feel like it kind of drifted away for a while, but I think it's come back. And certainly having moved here, I feel like there's so many really great examples, like you're talking about with Dungarvan or Ballykilcavan naming things after, things on the farm, or Hope, after like local Dublin characters. It's just nice to have that again, that going back to that kind of community feel, because I do think, especially now in a time like this, people want to not just support kind of the smaller brewers, but they really want to support the local small brewers. So I think having that sort of tie-in, even if it's something that doesn't ring a bell immediately, you start to dig into it and go, oh, that's really cool, and you start to learn more. It really kind of gives you that sort of emotional connection to it. So I think it helps.
Yeah, for us, it was just very much about having the sense of place. As I said, we're from Dungarvan, we want to be Dungarvan Brewing Company, so it was all that. So bringing in the locality and our place names was just where we started from. But we do tend to, as with the Curious Orange there, kind of go off the maps for different brews or specials and things. But yeah, that was really important to us, that it was like, we are Dungarvan, we're rooted in Dungarvan, we're not blowins, we're locals, etc. So, but like that, it's like, yeah, it's part and parcel. I suppose, come back to as well the community thing. It's part and parcel of the area and everything, and so that's how we brought in so many local names on our beers, even though lots of people lay claim to Black Rock. We have our own one. It's an actual rock. So, yeah.
No, I think it's so nice. You can have a Copper Coast on the Copper Coast.
Yeah,
and I think we've sent a lot of people down the Copper Coast to find it away. So I've known about it, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. I actually drove it last week just because I was on the road, and I came the long way home just to go on the Copper Coast, because I haven't been there so long.
I miss that, I have to say, because we're stuck with 5 kilometers, so we can't. We used to
Yeah.
spend a lot of time at those beaches.
I note I was on delivery in Tramore, so it was
essential business. Yes.
But yeah, I kind of did take the long and winding road home rather than the straighter N25.
Well, speaking of COVID, I'm going to ask you this. Just what do you think lies ahead for craft beer in Ireland in the face of COVID? How do we adjust to COVID? What do we do?
If I knew that. Yeah, magic $1 million question, whatever. Certainly there's been a big change. I mean, gosh, last March, April, I mean, I'm sure most of us, most small brewery owners, were, is this it? I mean, I did have that conversation with another brewery owner, and she was like, is this where we wind up? Like, is this going to be it? But I suppose, everybody started to think outside the box a bit, maybe look at other options for things. We set up some online sales that we'd never done before. And then I think as well, there was a bit of a delayed reaction, and then craft beer started selling again kind of come May time, and then we had a great summer locally, and with the staycationers, etc., that kind of thing. So yeah, it is a big unknown. I mean, half our market is gone, obviously, with the pubs, restaurants, hotels. I mean, we use 2 wholesalers, one of them totally deal with the hospitality industry. So I mean, I think they maybe took one order last July, but we haven't really heard from them since, and don't expect to. So there is a bit of that. There is even, I mean, pre-Christmas, it was pre-December, I suppose. Do we fill kegs? How many kegs do we fill? How long? There's even those sort of. I know we're on a very small scale, but it is kind of how far ahead can you plan for things, So yeah, so I suppose, but there has been, certainly, it feels a little bit like the olden days in some ways, of the earlier days, in terms of, I think a lot of people are coming to craft beer for the first time, because in the spirit maybe of supporting locals, supporting small businesses. I think also just having a little bit of time to, being on social media a bit more, being exposed to more brands. I actually noted it today. I was replying to a very nice email, not a complaint, but a noted, the sediment in all of our beers. So I know when we go into a new market, we suddenly start getting these emails. I found this stuff in my beer. What is, kind of thing. So I was like, oh God, another one of these emails to reply to. And I'm like, no, that's good. That means these are all new customers coming to us, So there's definitely a little bit of a sense of, I think, people discovering for the first time, or maybe rediscovering, going back to brands that they haven't, because there was so much happening, say 2014, 2015. There was so many new brewery openings, there was so many new beers coming out, or I was the same myself, trying to keep up and trying to try all the new stuff and keep up with everything. So I think maybe people have had little breathing space and said, what I haven't had in a long time now that I like, or that it's happened to me as well. I picked up a beer, it's like, God, I used to love this, why did I not have it for so long? Or so there's both discovery and rediscovery, I think, in that sense. So in that way, maybe it's good in that there are more people being exposed to different types of beers, to different brands, and different drinking habits, I guess. I think we all kind of went a bit cracked initially, and then sort of had to settle down in the first lockdown, and midweek drinks and stuff. So being maybe a bit more discerning about your choice. When I'm going to have 2 nice beers now on Wednesday night, what will they be, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also then you'd like to think that when the hospitality does open up, hopefully like what Christina experienced in Dungarvan, that there will be a, what, these guys are doing this and they're only over the road, and why not? Whether it's our beer in Dungarvan or Ballykilcavans up in there, up the Midlands. So it goes a bit fuzzy after sorry. Just that each, and that's what I like as well. And that's what I like to experience. I love, I go to Galway and I see our beer, but also I want to try, the local beer up there. And same as if you go to, I don't know, Prague, you want to drink their beer, or
right.
that kind of thing. So I suppose remaining optimistic, I suppose is the conclusion. And it's a funny old world. It's a funny old business at the moment, and everybody, it's not just in breweries, in all hospitality and retail, everything kind of flying by the seat of the pants a little bit, and I hope when the dust settles that everything's good and all that. But that would be, I think, how I see it progressing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we've touched on this before, just the idea of craft beer as forming part of, in COVID times, part of a community, being able to go online and try this beer and talk about it, and have that connection that you perhaps don't get with your like mainstream macro lager, where it becomes an event and an experience. And when there's not that many things to do, it's so nice to have even that small event and experience that you can share with other people. However, even though it might just be a beer, it is still something new to do. A novel experience in a time of not very many novel experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And we even participated ourselves as punters, and we just enjoyed that experience of doing a virtual tasting, and getting our couple of beers in the post and sitting down at 7 o'clock on a Friday night or whatever time, and having that experience, and but totally doing it as punters ourselves, just kind of something to do, something to look forward to, I guess, So yeah.
And you said you've run a lot of, you ran the tastings and that for the tours of Dungarvan, and what were your favorite experiences with that, and how did you find doing that?
I enjoyed the tours. I suppose, probably initially I would have been nervy and apologetic, like I said, I'm with the brewer now, that kind of thing. We would have often done two-handers, Cormac and I. So where he would do the brewing side, and then I would do the tasting side, or sometimes even if we had large groups, we might have done half each and swapped them over, that kind of thing. So I suppose the more you do them, I've come to realize, it's rare at this point that I get asked a question now I can't answer, because if I can't, I've gone and checked myself every time, or checked with the lads or whatever. So you will at times get the tricky, I do try and out any home brewers at the start, because I know they're gonna ask the sticky questions, or ask about yeast or something on it. But
guilty.
So, yeah, so but I can make a joke about that to start out. So so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the kind of interaction with people and the meeting people, and the I end up usually, I mean, especially when a group comes, they can be very, very quiet initially and reserved and everything. But by the time you're halfway through the tasting, then the chat is flying, the questions are flying. And I mean, I end up interrogating people. How did she end up here? What are you doing? What are you saying? You know, I'm sure probably get Christina all that when she was in. But you know, so I mean, I'm interested, I suppose, in people as well. Like, how do you know about us? How do you know about Dungarvan? What are you doing here? You know, we often get people, or have often when this happened, especially in summertime, who, you know, may have a family connection to Dungarvan and are here on holiday from the States, from the UK, from wherever, who bring the local family cohort with them, you know, who quite often haven't known about us or haven't been exposed, and they're like, really, you've been here? And that side of it as well, and the people side of it, and also it's generally good fun. We've had it actually came up on my phone, my pictures today, a year ago today, I think was our last big group at the brewery, which is a stag group that was in, which is, they're always kind of stag and hen parties, good crack as well. And they're always, I love when they ring to book and they get very, I said, it's a stag party, and they get very, well, you know, I said, no, it's fine, because any stag party that comes to us are generally fairly not up for the usual sort of stag do type messiness, you know, or if they are, they're starting with us, so they're not going to do that there. I send them off to town, but you know, so you can generally have a good bit of fun, you know, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I enjoy that side of it.
Yeah, you mentioned like that family connection with sort of, you know, people in the community, and that, you know, how there is this history of brewing in Dungarvan. Have you guys ever tried to sort of dig up old recipes from previous local breweries, or any thoughts to look that up?
We've kind of looked at stuff, and there's a very active the Waterford County Museum. If you've seen them on Twitter, they're very active on Twitter, and they did actually a few years back. They did a whole exhibition. They tied it in with Weevil Festival of Food here in April time, and they did a whole brewing and baking exhibition of brewery and bakery of old, you know. So they've often pulled up something. I mean, they tag us on things if they find on photos and things like that.
That is
I don't think we've found recipes going back. Now they would have, this brewery would have, as most of them did, ended up as a Guinness bottler. Right. For the last 20, 30 years of existence. So I don't think recipes have actually ever been dug. And we've talked about it in the past and things like that. It would be great to kind of get something to, you know. We also did engage with there's a monastery in Mellery, 15 minutes from here, say, beautiful up the mountains. And they would have been what's the word, a quiet order, and they would have always worked the land and everything. And one of the guys who works with us lives quite near, and he contacted them and was seen, was there ever and somebody, to be fair, engaged, a monk engaged well with him and all that. And he said, I've nothing. He said, but it must be a case that we brew beer here, because they did everything. They worked the land. They, you know,
they must have.
They did. Anything. So that would have been cool to get something from there. No, so we'll keep digging and see.
Yeah, it's there somewhere. Yeah,
it would be great.
It's definitely there. If I find anything related to Dungarvan specifically, actually, I think I might have. I will send it on, but I think I actually have, maybe. It's hard because, you know, with the burning of the records and everything, and I'm very angry about that. But yes. But yeah, no, because we do have like grain bills from like 1311 and things like that from Dublin. So I'm sure that if it's there, I will find it. And if I find it, I'll let you know.
Excellent.
But
progress. Yeah, there we go.
But no, undoubtedly, if it was a monastic community they were brewing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Just work on new stuff for now.
Which is good too. We like that. We like new stuff. Yes.
No, it's very interesting. So we're interviewing you actually as part of Women's History Month, and sort of right before Women's International Brew Day. Women's International Brew Day, as I suddenly completely forget everything that I know about that date. So we're going to ask you, well, first I'm going to ask you, are you tired of getting asked questions about being a woman in the brewing industry?
Sorry, you froze a second. Am I tired of?
I said, are you tired of being asked questions about being a woman in the brewing industry.
Okay.
Do you feel that we have gotten to a point where we can stop asking that question? I'm not leading that one way or the other. Do you feel that we need to keep asking that question? Do you think it's important to keep asking those sorts of questions?
I'm not tired of being asked anything. You know, I'm happy to engage with anything. I'm more than happy to speak about my experience or my womanly experience or my, so I've no issue with that. I do think it's a good conversation. It's a good question. It is one you get asked a lot. It is, even very recently, it's often, to be fair, out of maybe a little naivety or, no malice intended, but I do kind of get a lot, would you drink the beer yourself now? Kind of, that kind of thing. And I don't get narky or upset or anything when anyone asks me that. Any man asks me that, So I'm totally fine to engage with those kind of questions. I've no issue with that. It has, I think personally, when we started out, the market, the community, whatever, was so niche, it was so small. As in the beer drinking community, maybe the home brewing community, which we were fairly aligned with as well, through Cormac, obviously. There wasn't really a big male-female thing, or everybody's cool to hang out with everybody and that kind of thing. Whereas I do feel a few years in, a lot of masculinity came into it, and I think that's where it was time to start stamping the foot and go, hang on now. So I've no problem with doing that. And I've no problem with having these conversations or talking about being a woman in a man's world or in the beer world or whatever, But to be honest, I meet so many women in the beer world as well that it's never kind of been. And that's why I was a bit shocked when all of this sort of masculinity came into it. And I was like, we were all fine,
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
No, Sam, I'm in the tech industry and had the same thing happen. Actually, my first couple of teams were all majority female, and then boom, something else happened. It was weird.
Yeah.
So
all the beards are out.
Exactly.
So that's how it is, though, I guess. But there is still like a lot of women who do drink beer. Obviously, present company aside, I mean the obvious. But I mean, as I said, we do even with tourism that. I mean, I know at one point I was keeping track, and we'd had more hen parties and stag groups, on tours and things. So I do actually get a lot of all female groups coming, and I think maybe as well then I have been asked to come and speak to female groups, because obviously if they're, I know one particular women's group, women's association, whatever, kind of and then I suppose they want females from different industries to come in, so if I can help I will, but so what's the question? So no, I'm happy to speak about it.
Yeah, no, the only reason I ask that sort of not intentionally loaded question, but I ask that question is because sometimes it seems like as women in the beer industry that we are women in the beer industry, and we don't really get to explore much beyond being women in the beer industry. So that's why I kind of asked that question to see, are we still, how much do we still want to engage with these conversations? Do we want to engage with them all the time? What sort of level do we want to talk about being a woman in the industry? And how much can we also just say, I am a woman in the industry, but also, here are all these other things. Can we talk about those things too? And not only be sort of, I guess, only identified as woman in industry, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's funny, it's something I know in the past I've sort of thought about or looked at, or something, that when we started off, and I suppose the early years when it was a much smaller, I have a number, I should double check it, but I mean that there was 7 microbreweries in Ireland when we started.
Wow.
And us in Trouble Brewing started pretty much the same time. We both debuted at the Easter Festival in Cork that year. So, we pretty much at the same date of birth. That when you kind of look around in those first couple of years, when we were at the likes of the Beer Festival, that who was there and all, there wasn't really a brewery that didn't have a female attached. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and at the time, I suppose even the big ones now were small then, you know, like, so Carlo, it was always Kay O'Hara was there at the bar, and you know, Sally, it was Coulon, and you know, all these. So like, it was always a thing that, yeah, there's a woman in most breweries, or you know, are involved, or you know, I suppose the guys were generally out front in the picture with the wellies and the shovel or whatever. But you know, there was a sort of, you know, female part to each brewery or something. That's not wrong, but you know what I mean. So you know, so it wasn't such a big deal, I think, or something. And as I say, craft beer itself was so niche at the time. It was like you were strange anyway for doing it with it, whatever you or, you know, it was that thing that those people over there are doing, you know. So yeah, so it definitely, as I said, I mean, it did sort of seem to become very dominated by men for a while then, a few years back. But yeah, I mean, should it be a big deal? Should it be an issue that there is or isn't a woman? I don't know. Should it in any job? Should it in the tech world or anywhere? But I mean, I think it's important for a bit of balance, you know, to have, you know.
Absolutely.
So not just in a you know, box ticking exercise type way, but just, you know, generally in life kind of thing. You know, different perspectives come in and all that sort of thing. So yeah, to me, it's fairly important that there are women involved in the industry. Yeah.
Absolutely. And do you feel like there's more pressure for you now as a woman in the industry than perhaps it was when it first started, with when it was more, you're saying more equal as to now, or perhaps when it became really masculine there for a little bit? Or...
I think definitely I wouldn't say I feel more pressure, but then again, I sort of see myself as we're a bit longer in the tooth, we're a bit, you know, kind of, maybe I don't care anymore. I don't know. I'm just old and tired. I don't know. But, you know, so I wouldn't feel pressure in that way. I just feel that this is me, this is who I am, taking it easy kind of thing. In life in general. So, you know, so that's fine. But I think that they're definitely they reach a point where, as women, we just have to sort of elevate our voices and go, hey, you know what, we're here too, and we actually have been for a while. And you know, I think that did reach a point, and you know, was necessary and important. And but yeah, so but no, certainly I don't suffer fools lightly, maybe, or something. But I just walk on by that.
No, I think that's great. I completely agree with you. I remember reading an article, like, I don't even remember how many years ago, about women from some beer blogger in the UK who wrote something about women who drink beer unfeminine, as if women all want to be feminine, and as if we care what you think. And so, no, I completely agree that we sort of need to continue to kind of, you know, raise our hands and our voices and be like, we've been here. We've always been here.
Yeah. I don't even know how to respond to that. That doesn't
ring
I didn't read that article.
Like,
I didn't bother finishing it.
Yeah.
It wasn't someone famous or anything. It was just some, like, and I was just I just remember someone sent this to me and I was just like, what? Like,
that's like saying if I drink my coffee out of a mug rather than a cup.
Right.
Or, I don't know. I mean, what's feminine? Or
just the audacity.
If I'm unfeminine, I don't know. I've never tried to be feminine. So
yeah, like as if femininity is the be all end all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, not everyone wants to be feminine, and like, beer doesn't have a gender. How bizarre! Like, what a weird thing to say.
I do like a stem glass. I'm gonna say. But it is a pint.
Exactly. Oh, funny.
Oh man.
Yeah, I just walk away from that one, I think.
I know.
Yeah.
What do you even say to that?
I grew up, I have 3 sisters, and I grew up with a dad who did not think we should drink out of pint glasses or bottles, so we of course did the complete opposite.
Right.
and he's okay now. But it took a while. It took
And
a
see,
while.
I'm the opposite. I have four brothers.
Okay.
So I probably grew up in a fairly neutral environment. Our house, so, like we were all the lads.
Yep.
I do have a sister as well, but so I mean, just there wasn't a big boy girl thing or anything.
Yeah,
It was like, so I mean, I'm four older brothers, so like, just never a big deal to be
Yeah.
dealing with boys or men or anything like that kind of thing. So yeah, they're all the one. I mean, as in I treat anybody.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Do you think there are any unique challenges to being a woman in the beer world? Or sort of going back to what we're saying, particularly, I guess, in Ireland, do you think there are any unique challenges? I mean, I think this is kind of piggybacking off of sort of what Joanne just said. And
Like, not, yeah. Do I? I don't think so, but maybe I'm blinkered by saying that. I'm not second guessing myself now. I mean, I don't think so. There's so many, women I know of working in different parts of the beer world, but being, sales reps for distributors or working in off licenses and, selling in pubs, whatever. So, I mean, I don't think there is, but I'm open to correction on that, I suppose.
No,
a stronger opinion.
No, I mean, your lived experience is your lived experience, and that's so important. And I think we need to hear everyone's sort of voices on.
Yeah, and I mean, I
that.
suppose that, like Joanne said about her dad not liking her drinking a pint, or me saying, people say to me, "Would you drink beer yourself?" kind of thing. I assume you drink wine, kind of thing, which I do as well. But so I mean, which again is a little bit of, as I say, naivety, old-fashioned values, whatever, no malice intended kind of thing, I would think. I don't know your dad or anything, obviously, but, and I suppose my parents would have been the same, would have been, women don't drink pints, that's sort of the way, but they've no issue with me drinking beer now. What the hell, they're not telling me. But, I mean, they probably would have come from a generation of, it's a bit uncouth or something to be holding a big dirty pint.
Like my mom still wouldn't drink from a pint glass, but that's her choice, and that she doesn't like it. So
yeah. So.
We did get a picture of her though drinking out of a stein on my 30th birthday. Just for my dad. So
my mother is more of a wine drinker, and actually when we got these stemmed pint glasses, she was looking, they'd be good for wine, wouldn't they? And I was like, yeah, a pint of wine.
Pint of wine, yeah.
Pint of wine.
So I don't know, maybe she's sitting at home having her pint of wine tonight.
Less refills,
This just all reminds me of the feminist protests in the 60s when they went into the bar and they all ordered brandy, and then they were all served their brandy, and then they ordered a pint, and the barman refused to serve them a pint, so they had drank their brandy, and so they refused to pay, and then they just walked out. And this was part of like the movement to get women to be able to be accepted because bars would refuse to serve pints.
And then they also had to sit in the lounge with us,
Yeah.
So and that I believe was true as well. Like that. There was a pub, do you know the pub, Joanne, in Waterford, that famously didn't serve women at all up until very recent years.
I read about it recently now. I can't remember the name of it. We're only here about 18 months, but I remember reading about it,
Yeah, I mean, that was even when we had started. They famously, a cranky owner that didn't allow women in, was the first non-smoking pub, I think, in Ireland. Never allowed smoking. We weren't allowed to swear in there, so it wasn't just the women he had an issue with. And it's been taken over by newer, fresher owners now. But so just the old-fashioned values or whatever that he was imposing. So.
No, it's interesting that there are still kind of remnants or remnants of those ideas that are centuries old that are still kind of battering around here, left, right, and center, and we sometimes don't know where they come from, but there they are, still there.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned too, like, the women, in so many different roles across the industry. And I think that's another thing we want to sort of pick up on as we talk to more women in beer over, across this year is, obviously people always know the brewers because
Mm.
that's kind of been the media focus, the way the sort of craft beer media evolved. And obviously there are certainly women who are brewers, but there are women and men in so many other roles that are absolutely vital to the industry. Like obviously, all the sort of back office stuff, packaging, I mean, everything. There's such a huge supply chain. And we're talking about malting on a previous episode. I mean, so many things that people don't even think about as, absolutely essential to the industry. And to sort of hopefully spotlight some more of those roles, I think will be really, really interesting. And I think, again, people don't even know that a lot of these jobs exist. So it's, and that a lot of them have like amazing women doing them. So hopefully we'll get some of those stories too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there are definitely a lot across the whole spectrum of, which is not just in the brewery. There are all those other roles, as you say, kind of ancillary roles or whatever, feeder roles that are really important. I mean, off the top of my head, I can picture a name if you want, certain, really good sales reps and stuff, and I mean, if the beer isn't getting out there, then forget about it, kind of thing. So yeah, really important to it all.
No, absolutely. I think you are both. Everyone is absolutely right that the brewer, as Lisa said, is sort of the famous person, but the brewery can't run without the marketing team, without social media, without running tastings and tours and all these other parts. And so it all works together in a beautiful sort of ecosystem. But yeah, I do think sort of highlighting the importance of people in a brewery besides the brewer, not to disparage or take away from the importance of the brewer, but to also understand there are all these other bits and pieces. So if you want to go into a brewery and or working in a brewery and maybe that's not where I'm skilled, or I don't feel like maybe that's what I want to do, there are all these other options for you to work in the industry but not brew specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I feel like almost every quality assurance lab I know has been all run by women, like almost every brewery I've ever been to. And obviously that's crucial, but again, something else too to do with your microbiology PhD, which, where are those academia jobs? So a lot more fun over here.
Oh, yeah. I guess I should ask, what about female consumers? How do you think, or do you think there's been a change in the amount of female consumers over the years as you've been brewing and making beer, or no, not at all? You think it's still pretty equal and 50-50, and
it's certainly not 50-50 male female, no, and never has been. But having said that, I think even when we started out, there was a good, a strong female cohort, market share, whatever the terminology is. We were definitely identifying like there's a good strong market for female drinkers. Is that right? And I would, gosh, I haven't looked into this or done anything on it, but my assumption would be that it's probably still the same percentage. But, the market share has grown a bit, but so the percentage breakdown is probably similar to what it was maybe 10 years ago, but that there are more of each group drinking. But yeah, I think we always felt that there was a kind of a strong market in the female drinking world or something. Something we did identify in our early years was, probably when we were doing our research before we started, was there were a lot of women at that time moving from, say, wine to beer, in that I can drink really nice beer, whereas if I open the bottle of wine, it's gone, and it's not healthy or feasible or whatever to be drinking that sort of way. So yeah, I'll treat myself to one or two nice beers rather than the bottle of wine, maybe, kind of thing. So I think there was a bit of coming over from that side of the market. It's come up so much with me, especially people asking, what should I want to get my wife into beer, my girlfriend, my whatever, sister, whatever it is. What would women like, kind of thing? And it's like, oh my God, I hate that question. It's kind of, what does she like? What does she drink? What kind of, does she like sweet or sour or savory, or so it's like everybody, everybody's different taste buds and palates, and so I'm not of the women would like this kind of thing.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Skill. Because same as men, I actually think dare I say it, I think women are actually more open-minded. Women will try more. I think men kind of find a style and stick to it in some ways. Whereas women, I do often get, especially by groups of women coming, that there are some who are like, I don't drink beer at all now. And I always say, that's no problem. Will you just taste each one? And I don't mind if you don't like them. I have no problem at all if you don't like them. Just please taste each one. And I do often get a, you know, I as I say, interrogate people obviously, and I would sort of say, you know, would you try the red ale? I think, and they can clarify because they just see this, you know, their grandfather drank Smithwick's kind of thing, and that's the image they have. And but you know, like you know, I just think that might be to your palate because I think you don't want a hoppy or you know, and the same even when often. Again, I'm generalizing, but groups of women often, when it comes to, you know, if I'm going light to dark at a tasting, and when it comes to stout, and I won't bother. And I'm saying, will you just taste it? Just no bother. If you spit it out, if you absolutely hate it, that's fine. Will you just try it? And so many women, and I suppose I'm talking about now in a general group sense. These are not particularly beer drinking women, you know, people who are into their beers or anything like that, are often really pleasantly surprised when they try stout. So I think just keeping an open mind in general, you know, is all I ask. And you know, I mean, I always say, you know, especially people say, oh, I don't like beer, and I'm like, just give me 20 minutes. And we find you do like a beer, we just need to find the beer or the style of beer, the type of beer, or, you know, and often what you find is what they don't like is a hoppy, bitter flavor or something. You know, when somebody says to me, I don't like beer, and then there are other things there's another path we can go, or there's other ways we can try this out, and they're often pleasantly surprised or good at acting in front of me. But I like to think that I've changed people.
I mean, that's something we've talked about a lot on various podcasts, actually. There is something for most people, and people generally say they don't like beer, but they haven't, you know, they've kind of tasted one specific or just something very generic. And if you actually talk and have a discussion with them, you can figure out what they might actually like. You know?
Yeah, and usually just asking, well, what do you drink? Do you drink wine? You know, and then kind of knowing where to run. And this isn't a beer thing, I'm sure a wine person would say the same, like there's such a gamut of flavors and everything. So, you know, it's just sort of teasing out what don't you like about it kind of thing, and what might you like and what flavors might appeal to you. And then we can go with that. Yeah.
No, I my mom is one of those, oh, I don't like beer. But she goes to every single beer school she can get her hands on. She loves it. She wants to learn everything. But I finally got her. She likes cherry sour beers.
Hey.
She will drink any cherry sour beer you put in front of her, but nothing else. But we found one.
You found it, yeah.
She found the one.
So speaking of, what was your favorite beer to brew, or couple favorite beers to brew? That Dungarvan made, or what you like to drink, you know?
I do get asked loads when I finish a tasting, and it's funny, I act surprised every time, and often it's the same questions you get asked over and over. And one of them is always, and which one's your favorite? Oh gosh, I couldn't pick her, you know, that kind of thing. But I think the one I have most affinity to is the one Joanne is drinking there, which is the Curious Orange, because that was, as I said at the start, I don't pretend to brew, I don't, but that was the one I sort of, that was my, I wouldn't say how many years ago, but that was my 40th birthday beer, basically. And I gave a brief to Cormac, saying, I want this, I want that, I want these kind of flavors, this kind of thing. I want a Saison, because Saison is kind of probably my favorite style, if that's the next question to come. You know, and sort of worked on developing with him. So probably the one I have, as I say, most affinity with, and if I was to drink somebody else the first time, probably the one I'd be drinking of our own. So I do really like that one as well. So yeah, that I class that as my beer. Even though my name isn't on the label. So yeah, that was my my 40th birthday party week. It was the first issue of that. I should have said 30.
we can edit it. That
yeah.
4 years ago. Okay.
Say it again.
So yeah, that's the one that I think previous to that we did a seaweed saison before. We did it a few times in the past, and I think that was always my number one. So
that sounds
maybe we
amazing.
need to redo that now so I can do a nearer in time comparison. But yeah.
Mm.
So obviously I go for saison.
Does anyone have any last questions before we stop torturing Claire?
We just want to know when we can get down there and have some again, but we know none of us know. So, but
Yeah.
looking
I have a
forward to it.
spare room. You can stay.
Yes,
You
yes,
just have to move the boxes.
yes.
Yeah. I cannot wait to get back to Dungarvan in the after times. We rented a house down there, beautiful house. Absolutely want to do it again. We brought the dog. It was amazing.
It's great. Yeah, it is actually a really good summer town. You know, I know everybody's going to say the same about their town or whatever, you know, but like, I mean, we're honestly, we're blessed with our 2 kilometers last year, you know. When the weather was good and everything like that, you know, we were literally cycling to the beach with the kids and things like that. So it is a good spot down here, and I think the whole, actually all of County Water, I think it's fantastic. But yeah, it's a good place to come. I think it's a really good summer town as well. So yeah, come join us.
Oh, we will.
So,
Amazing.
yeah, it will be great to have a few. I don't know what's going to happen this summer, but if we can have, I don't know if we'll be doing tours, if we'll be doing groups, you know.
Who knows? Oh, we'll find out.
Yeah. But yeah, all welcome. when allowed, all welcome.
Any further questions, Joanne or Lisa?
I think you've asked the stuff I was going to ask.
Yeah, my question is more to go bother our local distributors to say, how come you don't have as much as, you know, I'd like to go pick up. So I'll have words with them.
Excellent.
I can get it quite easily, actually.
Yeah, well, and I now that that's true, and now that we're moved into our new house, we've just moved recently and unpacked. I could actually place an order and have it appear. So that's, you know, that's a possibility.
Yeah. Beer mail is the best mail.
It is the best, especially when you forgot you ordered something and it just appears. You're like, oh,
yeah.
I do love it when we have like our meetups and like we order a bunch of, we're talking about beer. And so then I order the beer at the time and I, you know, forget that I've ordered the beer. And then it's a big surprise. Past me bought future me this lovely beer gift.
Exactly.
I've done that a few times.
Yeah.
That's the best.
You know, I do have one question, actually, going slightly off topic, but like, what are your views about like sustainability within the beer industry? Is that like, it's quite a hot topic at the moment, I suppose. And
yeah,
one of Erica, who was on here, she's doing her thesis, I think, on it's about using spent grains, the ways that we can use spent grains and that kind of thing to just make it more sustainable. Is that anything you've given any kind of thought to, or?
Yeah, it is. It's a sort of I mean, it's always a topic of discussion. I think we had our ICBI AGM there recently, which is our Independent Craft Beers of Ireland community of breweries, and you know, it rears its head every time a group of us get together with the whole beer origin green certification, which we're all expected to get, which we all feel is far too onerous, and but generally most breweries do work at a quite sustainable level, as I would say probably most small producers do. So all of our grain from day, we're, as I think most people are, we're registered animal feed producers as well. So all of our grain goes to feed cows. Cormac's neighbour is a farmer, has a dairy farm, and he takes all our grain. So, and that is all registered and tracked and everything that's obviously going into the food chain. So we do, in terms of spent grain, yeah, we do, but I think generally we operate very sustainably. Now, obviously, there would be economies of scale if you're working at a bigger level in terms, you know, we use an awful lot more water, for example, to make a pint of beer than your big breweries would. So barring that, but I mean, even down to, I know there's sheets of cardboard that come in that cover our bottles, cover each layer in the pallet, which are kept and we use them for something, you know what I mean? Like, so there are, I think, as in any small business, there's a certain thriftiness generally. and what can we fashion this thing into, or that kind of thing. We recapture or water, so when we're chilling our beer, it goes through the heat exchanger, and the warm water that comes out we recapture to start the next day's brew, so we're starting at a higher base temperature and more efficient in that way. So I think for the most part most small breweries do all this kind of stuff and are generally quite sustainable, but I think I would extend that to probably most small businesses anyway, but small food producers do, and I mean, you don't want to see the bins getting too full, you don't want, so yeah, I think we do operate at that level, but I think then it's hard when we're sort of expected to put the same sustainability plan in place as a very large multinational corporation who probably has somebody specifically to do this work, and to so we all I speak to anyway find this as a difficulty, as a challenge. So we don't have our origin green stamp, even though we probably are working, and if we put a week aside maybe and put the time into, but we just don't have the time because we're running and racing and all that kind of thing. So that's the sort of difficulty that people are coming across, that we generally are working at a sustainable level and doing all we can and all that, but for ourselves, not just because we're signed up to a charter, but yet not getting the mark that the big companies do.
Great
but
question.
yeah, we do. I mean, there have been interesting uses of the spent grain, going back to that, which we've seen, dog biscuits and growing mushrooms, and we've had a lot of people over the years, not so much anymore, I'd say they've just given up on us, who, have called in and like, can I get, I have 2 pigs in the backyard, can I get some? But we just found it easier to deal with because of having to document everything and traceability and all that. And we have a guy who comes and just takes everything, rather than splitting it out in separate places and things like that. We've actually, Cormac in the past has made bread using spent grain, which is quite cool as well.
Oh,
except when you use, don't use the spent grain from stout though, unless you like grey bread. It tastes fine, but just, grey bread. So, we have ourselves, but yeah, generally goes to feed some cows. When we initially started and Cormac approached, as I say, his neighbour about taking the grain, he was a bit skeptical and all that, and then he bounced back in delighted because the cows who had been fed this grain got a higher price at the mart.
Very nice.
So he's like, I'll take it all. And I think he doesn't necessarily, I'm not agricultural now, I don't fully, he doesn't always need it and everything, but he will find someone to give it to, but he doesn't want to sort of say give it to somebody else this week, and he wants it for the time he needs it, so he'll distribute it then to other people, I guess, or use it in different ways or whatever. So yeah, so that's where our grain goes. And he also takes our spent hops and stuff as well, which can't be used for animal feed, but they go into his compost as well, so they're all
okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of it, just do what you can as well, though, isn't it? You can only do so much. So.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's something that we would be aware of and just into personally anyway, and so yeah, definitely try to work at as a sustainable level as possible.
So any final thoughts, Claire, before we sort of end the hot seat challenge for you today?
No, I hope it wasn't too rambly.
Oh, it's fantastic.
That was wonderful.
I didn't prepare too hard. I was a bit nervous, so but it wasn't so bad. Serious. Maybe, yeah, I anticipated. They were lovely, really.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Claire, for coming.
Thanks for
Yes,
inviting
thank you
me
so
on.
much.
And answering all of. I feel like I might have asked some ridiculously hard questions there, with not intentionally. But yeah, no, it was wonderful to hear all your responses, and I just feel like I just learned so much today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of sit
I'll probably
down
wake up in the middle
and
and go, I should have said, then I wouldn't sound dumb.
We all have those conversations
Absolutely.
with ourselves every time. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on,
Yeah. Thank you all.
and thank you, Joanne and Lisa, for co-hosting with me today. And before we leave, just a reminder to check us out on YouTube and make sure to like and subscribe and comment and let us know what you want us to talk about. We're totally open and would love to hear your feedback on what you wanted to hear from us. So without further ado, goodbye.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Woo, oh, that was great.